How has failure shaped you? As a department head, I tried to implement a new leadership approach on Will Rogers and failed. 1989, the Irish Sea. 8,000 tons of steel moved silently, hidden in the depths of the Irish Sea. In the control room of the USS Will Rogers, SSBN 659, the officer of the deck ordered the ship toward the wider, deeper expanses of the North Atlantic. Glancing at the missile control panel, he could see the status of the 16 Poseidon missiles on board, each capable of carrying 14 multiple nuclear-armed reentry vehicles. These missiles were the sole reason for the existence of the Will Rogers, a nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine, SSBN for short, the kind of submarine the crew affectionately called a boomer. One thing above all else mattered for a boomer: to be at sea and in a condition that would enable it to execute a strike if so ordered. SSBNs were a vital component of America's strategic deterrent. The control room was the nerve center of the ship. So important were its 16 missiles invulnerable to attack once underway and submerged that boomers had two crews, a blue crew and a gold crew, to maximize the time the submarine could spend at sea on strategic deterrent patrol. The crews lived near New London, Connecticut, and Will Rogers was operated out of a forward base at Holyloch, Scotland. Every 3 months, the crews would swap, with a 3-day turnover period. After assuming the boat from the other crew, the new crew would spend 4 weeks doing the necessary corrective and preventive maintenance before going to sea. In order for the United States to have a credible strategic deterrent, the missiles needed to be ready to go. If Will Rogers couldn't make it on time, another submarine would have to remain at sea longer. 41 of these ballistic missile submarines were built between 1958 and 1965 in response to the Soviet threat, an impressive industrial accomplishment. Will Rogers was the last of the 41 SSBNs and had operated nearly continuously since its commissioning. Those original submarines were being replaced by the newer and more capable Ohio class. However, Will Rogers still had important operational tasking to perform. Nevertheless, after 33 years, it was a tired ship. Worse, during the patrol before I reported aboard, Will Rogers had collided with a trawler and failed an important certification. I checked the chart in the control room. We were on track to start the deep dive in about half an hour. I walked aft, past the rows of missile tubes and the reactor compartment to the engine room. With my flashlight, I started doing a last-minute walkabout. All the repairs had been properly certified as completed, but it wouldn't hurt to do one more visual check. As engineer officer for the Blue Crew, I was responsible for inspecting the nuclear reactor and the important auxiliary equipment and supervising the 60 men who maintained and operated it. There was a constant tension between doing things right and meeting deadlines. Every member of the crew felt it. The job was grueling, and I wasn't particularly happy with how things were going. The officer I relieved was very involved in details. He was always reviewing technical documents and directing maintenance and other operations. I was determined to change that by giving the men more control of their work, more decision-making authority, and fewer lists of tasks. In doing so, I hoped to bring the passion I'd experienced on Sunfish to Will Rogers. In this, I was going against the tide. Just prior to going aboard, I'd had the chance to write another SSBN for several days. It was undergoing an underway warfighting inspection, and the crew were tasked with different missions that required significant internal coordination. I followed the captain around to see what he did. He was everywhere, dashing to the engine room, then back to control, running to sonar, and from there to the torpedo room. I was exhausted before 24 hours were over. I'm not sure he ever slept during the 3 days I was observing. That ship did well on its inspection, and the inspection team specifically cited the involvement of the captain. I had a sense of unease because I knew that wasn't how I wanted to run a submarine. Even if it were, I knew I could not physically do what he did. Even though the Navy encouraged this kind of top-down leadership, I pressed forward with my Sunfish-inspired plan to give control to the department rather than orders.